Hello and welcome to today's video. So this time we're going to be taking a look through my vintage Star Trek paperback collection. So this is not the pocket ones, this is all the stuff pre-1980-ish, so quite vintage, and I've got quite a lot to go through, about a box and a half in fact. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Okay then, so we hark back to one of the very earliest Star Trek books. Is just the numbered series by James Blish, and all my Star Trek books, this is January 1967, all my Star Trek books are first printings. Now, when I started really concentrating on getting a decent Star Trek collection, I made a point of trying to get the very best condition books that I could get my hands on. So I'm not envisaging loads and loads of work to be done on these. However, there may be some, and as usual, we'll do the top edges, and obviously these will all be able to we'll be able to give them a polish as well. So this is number 3. This one's certainly a bit lower grade than some of my other ones, but still a first print in there, April 69. So as a general rule, most of mine aren't too bad, but there will be a few. I mean, when you think these are 50 plus years old now, some of these, it's incredible, isn't it? And some of them are absolutely, they are definitely all out there in brand new condition, that's for certain. But one of the other things that with my Star Trek books is that I do prefer Star Trek in the original American editions rather than the British editions. Now, a lot of the British ones from this period were published in the UK by Corgi, and I'm not so much a fan of those as the lovely American ones. I think the American ones got better jackets for starters. The British ones are a bit different, and they just feel better in the hand. I know it's a bit of a silly thing, but they just read better, in my personal opinion, you know. But these so far are all pretty good. Got a bit of surface marks on. As I said, we'll give them all a brush off, and we'll be able to give them all a polish as well. But we have got a lot to get through, so I won't hang around. We shall zoom through these. Now I have, if you're looking for a bit more information about these Star Trek books, I have done dedicated videos for like all the different mini-series within this series. So like I did a video on these numbered James Blish books, and then I did one on the photo novels and the books, the Bantam paperbacks and the Star Trek logs. So if you are looking for a bit more information on Star Trek in paperback form, do check on my other channel where there is a whole playlist of vintage Star Trek paperback goodness, and I've got loads more to come as well. So just head on over there if you'd like a bit more. But as I said, on the whole, I'm hoping that these are predominantly quite nice copies, because, as I said, I've done my dedicated videos on these. That's lovely, isn't it? And temporarily, until I get a bit more bookcase space, once I've been through these and cleaned them properly, they are going to go into sort of short-term storage for a little while, because I do need the space to do some other bits and pieces within my collection. So this is basically giving them the last once-over before I pack them up for a little bit of time anyway. It won't be for long, but I will need to put them away for a while. I'm having a little rejig of my sort of area where I store my books at the moment. It's like an ongoing process, but I'd like it finished by the end of the year if possible. And that'll give me a bit of room to expand, but also a little bit of a shuffle would never hurt anyone. I do try and film my what I call shunting sessions, where I make room within my existing collections for new acquisitions, and they're always good fun. But the videos can be a couple of hours long, and that would be the highlights of what's taken the best part of a day, because that's generally how long the shunting sessions are. These are great, these phone novels. Really, really love them. They meant so much to me when I was a kid. And thankfully, I got quite a few of mine when they were like remaindered. So mine are, most of mine are British copies, but they were copies that were unsold back in the day. Don't know why Star Trek was huge in the UK, the same as it was in America. And these photo novels were just fantastic. I remember just loving them. Absolutely loving them. Another favourite of mine, The Deadly Years. I haven't watched this one in a while, but I remember it being great stuff as they slowly get older. Yeah, so there was 12 original series photo novels, and then they did 2 photo novels for the first 2 movies, but they're in black and white. Sadly, a little introduction there by DeForest Kelly. Then we're on to the Star Trek logs. So there was 10 of these. Alan Dean Foster. These adapted the animated series episodes. These often turn up in far, far worse condition. This first one here is one that I wouldn't mind an upgrade on. And also, I think, possibly the last one, although I may have done that by now. Here's number 2. Yeah, so far, we've not needed to do loads of work, have we? But that's cool. It's going to be great to look at all these classic Star Trek paperbacks, which I do love. There's a chap on Facebook who I'm friends with, and he's got, for the fiction books, he's got over 800 now, and for the guidebooks and different aspects of Star Trek, he's got about 400 odd. Absolutely amazing collection. I think he said he had 49 fiction books in hardback. I've not got any of them. I've got one odd one, which we'll see in a while, which is actually the very first Star Trek book that came out. But it was one written for quite youngsters, young kids, you know. But yeah, these are not bad. This is a good way to review all the early Star Trek books, because I think I've pretty much got them all. There might be some really obscure things that I might be missing, but all the proper Star Trek releases I have got. Yeah, I think this was the one that I had in bad condition. It looks like I did get round to upgrading it, but it took me ages to find one. Log number 9, and then the final log was log 10. Lovely. Moving on to the Bantam paperbacks now, and this was another one which is really difficult to find in nice condition. Spock Must Die. It was pretty much the first original Star Trek novel beyond the adaptations, and these will just be in the rough order that they came out. We got Star Trek Lives, good stuff. The New Voyages. This has a second part a little bit later, but the order that these are coming in are ones which are the order that they were published. Spock Messiah. And you may say, why was everyone so Spock-centric? I mean, they really were a bit Spock-mad back then, but he was a really popular character. It was as simple as that. He was more popular than Captain Kirk. This one's got a little, looks like a 1 and 8 in the front page there. That's just the sort of thing we're looking for, any sort of little marks or imperfections. Some of these are my original ones that I've had literally for 30, 40 years. Other ones, ones that I picked up fairly recently, so, you know, within the last 10 years or so. It's a little bit of the worse for wear, that one, The Price of the Phoenix. There's that second volume of New Voyages. Nice one there, Mudd's Angels. Great character, wasn't he, Harry Mudd? Oh look. But these jackets, they're just terrific. Really, really great. Lovely. Starless World. And you've already seen on the channel some Star Trek stuff from my collection. And I've still got all the British annuals and things to sort out as well, which we'll get to in due course when we do another load of large format videos. Large format books rather, in those videos. World Without End. Fate of the Phoenix, quite a cool one this as well. See, that one's really nice. It's lovely condition. They do vary a little bit. Devil World. Yeah, not many of these have needed much work, have they? I sort of guessed that they might be like that, but in my quest to go through every single book in the collection and show them on this channel, going over them carefully so they're all clean, I didn't want to miss any out. So consequently, we're going to have little runs like this where the books, as I've picked them up, I've probably cleaned them as we've gone along. In some cases anyway, not all cases, but in some cases. Right, the next lot's already here as well. So we're carrying on. We're still on the Bantams for a couple more books here. So this is Galactic Whirlpool. That's David Gerrold. He's the chap who wrote The Trouble with Tribbles, another one of my great favourite classic Star Trek episodes. Corny, yes, but great. Death's Angel, Kathleen Sky. As I said, I've covered all of these books in depth on my other channels, so if you really want to get really into it, that's the place to look. This is another unusual one. Now, this is a Pocket one, so Pocket got the license from Bantam around the time of Star Trek the Motion Picture. So I've got a few books here from that very early 80s period, but I've not got any of the Pocket numbered Star Trek books, of which there's 96 numbered, and then there's some like offshoots and mini-series and stuff, and they will be coming up I would imagine we could probably do the whole lot in one hit again, but there'll be about the same amount of books that we're seeing here today. So quite a few. Star Trek trivia book there. This is a great read if you've never come across this one. Chekhov's Enterprise, all about how they managed to finally bring Star Trek back with the motion picture, and then how they were all, he always hoped that he would have a bit more to do in it than he actually did, but it's a great story, that one. This one's quite scarce. This is the comic book adaptation of the motion picture. Don't see this one very often, and when you do, it tends to be quite expensive, so that's quite a nice one. Here is the other two photo novels. So Star Trek the Motion Picture in colour, and then we've got the photo story for Wrath of Khan. That's in black and white, which is a shame. I remember picking these up. They were, once again, these were remaindered, so they were in the bargain bookshops, cheap at the time, back in the day. This is extremely rare, I think. This is the original Klingon dictionary, which became a massive bestseller. But this was the original printing of it, and boy oh boy, I think it took me 2 years to actually find it, 1985. So that's it for the Pocket books. All the rest of the Pocket ones we'll see will be in a future video, which will be with the numbered series. Then we got the Best of Trek, and this was like a fan magazine in effect, and they did fan fiction. So they couldn't call it Star Trek. They couldn't use any of the Star Trek images, but it was sort of Star Trek in a fan's vein, as it were. And they're not bad. There's some really good stuff in here, as you might expect from fan fiction, and there is also some stuff which isn't so good, but on the whole it's not bad. I've never really gone out my way to try and collect these. I'm not sure exactly how many there are. I think there may be almost 20, but I remember the tail end ones actually selling them back in the day, in the 90s. It was still going then, in my shop. I said the sort of images on the front, they look Star Trek-ish, but obviously they're not actual ships from Starfleet or anything recognisable like that, because they didn't have those rights, Of course, a similar thing would eventually come along with Star Trek Strange New Worlds, wasn't it? Where they actively encouraged fans to go and write fan fiction based on different aspects of the series. And absolutely loved those. That was a great, great series. Here's the best of Trek 8. And most of these are pretty nice condition, in all honesty. Number 9 there. Never officially published in the UK, but comic shops and the like would import them. Science fiction bookshops, places like Forbidden Planet and Forever People, the ones that were around back then, they would import these for the Star Trek fans. 30. I mean, the artwork's really, really great, but it's not really Star Trek. It's science fiction, shall we say. Some foxing and stuff around these. They'll definitely benefit from a good brush, because they're not ideal. They're not perfect by any means. And it's changed from Signet to Rock for these last few, by the looks of it. And that's the best of Trek. Best of Trek 17, we'll get rid of that. There we are. That was 1994, that one. But it keeps the run complete. Now back into time again. This is an Ace book. And this is a Star Trek catalogue. So again, these are the sorts of books that are quite tricky to find in tip-top condition. 1979. So no doubt published on the back of all the publicity for Star Trek the Motion Picture. Here's a slice of 70s action, if you've ever seen one. Shatner, Where No Man, the authorised biography. So he himself didn't write this one. He would write his own autobiographies later on, and they're really entertaining. 1979. We do tend to forget what an absolutely massive star Shatner was. Maybe not so much today, and he is an old man, isn't he? Let's be honest, but he's still a great guy. That's one of those like choose your own adventure books. Pretty good. I quite like those. There's two of Star Trek ones, which I have only got the one. This one is a Leonard Nimoy one. I think it's of his love poetry. So we'll hastily skim over that. This is a great, great book. If you've never read this, this is absolutely fantastic. It's the making of Star Trek. This is the original printing of it. I wouldn't say it's one of the very early Star Trek books. It's how the series came to be. It is fantastic, this one. It really, really is. First printing, September 1968. Highly recommend that one. It's a great book. Letters to Star Trek. This is by Ballantyne. She's got some folded over pages there. Looks like it's been dinged somehow. Bend these back. Yeah, so my Star Trek books are broken down by publisher. That's a little Ballantyne one there. That's cool. Now these next two are also fantastic. They're by David Gerrold again. So one of them is how David Gerrold managed to get The Trouble with Tribbles to screen. This is a really, really immaculate copy. And both of these are signed by David Gerrold. There he is. And then this one's like a look behind the scenes of Star Trek. Once again, both fantastic. 1973 and also signed. Really, really pleased with those. Oh, beautiful, beautiful copies. Got them a long, long time ago, but they're lovely. Right, let's make a bit more room. We've still got some more to go through. Okay, so carrying on then. Now, this isn't actually a Star Trek book, but it is by D.C. Fontana. You might recognise that name. She was script editor for Star Trek seasons 2 and 3, and she wrote a couple of stories as well. That was a lot of people think that this particular book led to the creation of Mr. Data. So that's why that one's quite important. Another offbeat book, The Making of Trek Conventions. It's all about the early Star Trek conventions. There was a lot of fans. There was a photo of Isaac Asimov there, who was at one of the very early Star Trek conventions. The Star Trek quiz book, The Inevitable Quiz Book. It's all right. Meaning in Star Trek. It's okay. The official Star Trek cooking manual. I believe this one's quite scarce, so if you ever come across this, it's worth grabbing. It's one that doesn't turn up very often. July 1978. Yeah, you don't see that around that often. Another one here, Strange and Amazing Facts About Star Trek. Another quite scarce one, in actual fact, this. Don't think it sold too well. Archway, which was like the junior division of Pocketbooks, 1986. This is the very first Star Trek book that was ever printed anywhere in the world, which is this one for children, Mission to Horatius. It did get re-released by Pocketbooks in the 1990s in a facsimile edition, but this is the original one, 1968, copyright, Whitman. Quite scarce. That took me ages to get a half decent one. And alongside, because these are the same sort of format, these have been shelved with my other sort of slightly larger format Star Trek books. This is an unofficial one, so it says Trek Navigator rather than Star Trek, and that's the way to tell if it's an authorised book or not. But I remember it being one of the better ones because there's a load of unauthorised stuff around, but this one was not too bad, as I recall. Back to this one now, which is vintage again, Star Trek Speaks, Susan Sackett. Classic dialogue, a few pictures, just the sort of thing that they were pumping out by the bucket load in the 70s. This one's scarce, and once again I had to get a copy from the States. I don't remember ever seeing this for sale in the UK. It was the making of Star Trek 2, the motion picture, The Wrath of Khan, and a similar story in fact for this one, which was making of Star Trek the motion picture, which is actually slightly bigger again. Both of these quite scarce, particularly in the UK. That's a great photo down at NASA, wasn't it? When they visited. Good stuff. So the two making of books are quite unusual. This one, I've had a couple of copies of this. It's not a favourite of mine. It's sort of like humorous quotes next to pictures. Pretty awful in all honesty. You know, I wouldn't recommend this at all. But it is part of. It's published by Banter, part of the Star Trek story. And the last one to look at today is the Nitpicker's Guide for Classic Trekkers. So this was another unofficial one, and they did a companion volume for the Next Generation episode as well. It's really good. So you just choose the episode that you're watching, and it'll be filled with the basic story, trivia, some questions. Then I'll have a few things to look out for, bloopers and things like that, cameos. It's good. It really is good, and as I said, the Next Generation one is equally as good. So yeah, the Nitpicker's Guide, I do recommend those. Right, so that's all the books sort of gone through, and very little actual repair work was required, which is sort of what I suspected. Next thing then, we're going to go through and give all the books a brush. Okay then, so got them into a few handy piles, and we'll give these a bit of a brush down. Some of them would have already gone through the process as I picked them up in the last few years. Others never. So it's not going to hurt to give them all a once over before they do eventually get put into, as I said, a bit of short-term storage. Not long-term, because I intend getting all the Trek books out in one area. As soon as I've got that area basically built, I've got to get some new bookcases, and I'm going to put all the Star Trek books together. I think they'll look really great. They're a bit sort of, well, excuse the expression, spaced out across my main sort of collections at the moment. They're not all in the same place. which is not ideal. I've got some sort of up with my main book library, I've got some in the office, and I've got some in my bedroom. So they're all over the joint, but I think I've just about got them into a stage where they're now quite well sorted, and it's just a matter of getting them all through this cleaning process so that I can then get them ready to shelve out when they will look very, very nice. But these so far aren't proving too dusty. They are in a pretty clean environment. These particular ones have been stored in the office, mainly where my wife works, because I don't work from home anymore. And it's a pretty clean area, so it doesn't look like there's much sort of dust has gone on these at all. I think we will find some of them will definitely benefit from the brush, but maybe they're not quite as bad as I thought they were going to be. Okay, that's pile 1. Right, here's pile number 2. Lovely. Yeah, some of these are slightly questionable, condition-wise, I mean. But most of the books we're looking at here are 50 years old, which is crazy when you think about it. Lovely. Right, let's get the next pile. Stack 3. These are actually better than I thought, condition-wise. They're quite a bit better than I thought. There's not a lot of dust coming off these. It may be, in actual fact, because the way that they've been stored long term, they've not been stood up. They've been sort of like in piles, like you see here, rather than actually on the bookcase stood up. So no dust, in effect, has dropped onto the top edges. Almost there for these A formats. Okay, now we have still got our pile of the larger format books, so we're going to need to do these almost individually. So it's definitely going to benefit from the polish. There's a few marks and stuff on the front there. Right, there we are. So we're all set to give the books a polish now. So let me rearrange the camera once more. Okay, back to the start now. So I've got a relatively clean duster. Got my Mr. Sheen. And we'll get this one soaked up, ready for a bit of polishing action. Now, there were a few here in the books that we've got today that were a little bit questionable and are going to definitely benefit from having the clean, and others which it's only going to be a cursory once over. But even something like this, the odd little mark here and there, this is the way we're gonna get it. Fingerprint mark on the back there. See, that's the sort of stuff that we're going to pick up on. Make these as good as possible. Not always an easy job, but on the whole, as we've seen, these aren't in exactly bad condition, so I don't think we're going to have too much trouble cleaning any of this stuff at all, and none of them have needed repair work at all. As I said, I've tried to be picky when I pick the books up, but in some cases, like this one for example, not a great back, but you know, it's as good as I could find at the time, you know, when I was putting the set together. So, and like any collector, I'm always in the market to upgrade. Should an upgrade come my way. Yeah, I am pleased that I've had all of these out to give them one last going over and film before they do go into the storage for the time being. And I hope it won't be for too long, but they're going to be stored in a way that if I ever need to go back and pull a particular book out, it's not going to be very difficult to do at all. It'll take me a couple of minutes and I'll be able to put my hand on it. And that's how I want it to be. I don't want to be putting stuff packed away that it's going to take hours and hours to get the stuff out again, because that's sort of how it is with some of the toys and stuff and that now, and that's one of the reasons why I'm having a good sort out, is because I want the stuff to be accessible. That I think is the key. Had a bit of a stain on the back, but it has, by the looks of it, come up okay. So any book that you find which has got like a black or a very, very dark cover and spine, like this one, finding them in tip-top shape is always going to be difficult, because any little mark or crease shows up like 10 times worse than it would on, say, a really light cover. So it's making some of the Star Trek books harder to find in nice condition than you might want them to be. But that's just the nature of the beast, I'm afraid. There we are, that's the first numbered Star Trek. Unfortunately, he only did the 12 books, but the last one, James Blish died whilst he was writing it, and it got finished off by his wife, J.A. Lawrence. And did you know they actually allowed Blish to, in the UK, to come to the BBC and view the BBC's copies of the actual shows, because there was no other way for him to see the originals, and some of them he didn't even see at the time. You know, if he missed that particular airing, James Blish, he would not. How was he supposed to write the adaptation of it? This is, in the days before home video and that, he couldn't just stream it and then knock the book out. He had the script, and that was about it. So he would go to BBC TV Centre, and they let him view the actual episodes privately and take notes, which was pretty cool. I thought that was a pretty good anecdote, that. These are coming up lovely. These are okay. We're not taking up loads of dirt, but we are taking up some dirt. Another one of my favourites, the Galileo 7. Great episode. I just wish with these that they'd done some more, in all honesty. But I can't imagine they were that cheap to produce, I guess. And of course, as they sort of started coming out and the photo novel boom happened, that was about the same time that home video came along, so the demand would have greatly diminished. Interestingly, this one isn't laminated like the rest of them, that Day of the Dove. Don't know why that is. Maybe a missed quality control. A slightly different sort of texture, different paper on the front jacket. It's not quite as glossy as the photo novels. Lovely. I think those are looking as good as we can possibly get them. Now I think rather than do the next stack of the small books, we'll do the few slightly larger format ones. That one's not going to need a lot, and it's not actually got that shiny a cover, so I'm going to be quite delicate. Just very superficially give it the once over. There's a few little marks on it, but I don't think I can improve anything over what I did initially when I got this one. As it's a pretty scarce book, so we're going to leave that as is. This one should be fine because I've had this since it was brand new. I sold it in my store back in the 90s. Remember, that took a long time to track down. In fact, I think I bought it off ABE Books in the end. I found someone who didn't charge that much to ship to the UK, but I don't think it was ever officially sold over here. The same with this one, The Making of Star Trek the Motion Picture. Don't think it ever had an actual UK release, which I'm surprised at really, because both Star Trek the Motion Picture and The Wrath of Khan were incredibly well received in the UK. But maybe it was a rights issue or something like that, or someone just made the decision, no, we don't think it's going to really do well outside of the USA, so we'll just release it over here, which is weird, isn't it? It would never happen like that today. You'd always be able to get something like that imported, or we'd have Amazon UK or any number of the comic shop wholesalers and that, you know. There we are. So that's the large format books done. Right, let's get Pile 2 out. Yeah, these are, the covers aren't quite as thick as some of the other books. I guess because these are like early 70s printings. They did change a little bit later on. But these early ones are slightly more delicate, so I'm going quite careful on those. I don't want to damage them at all. Yeah, I wouldn't say I was a massive fan of the animated series, but there are some highlights, and I don't dislike it completely by any means, but I think there's a lot more to it than perhaps you might first realise. But just I watched them at the time. I watched other Filmation cartoons. I particularly enjoyed the Filmation Tarzan, which was the same sort of animated style. Really enjoyed that. But there we are. Then the style changed for the last couple of books, where I think Alan Dean Foster had been given the go-ahead to really expand the stories, because they were selling so well, the books, that he sort of expanded the episodes out into full-blown Star Trek stories. Because of course by then they'd run out of original source material, and the Star Trek sort of bandwagon was in full flow. It's one of those weird stories that, you know, as time went on, I think more and more people got into it and realised what great quality television it actually was, and the original fans never stopped being fans. So there was the market for new Star Trek was getting bigger and bigger, and I think that's what's happened. And then the fan letter writing campaigns eventually paid off, and they were going to do that new series Star Trek 2, you know, in the mid-70s, which never quite happened, and then eventually they just rolled it all together and brought the franchise back in the first film, which I have to tell you, I remember as a 10-year-old boy going to see Star Trek the Motion Picture and absolutely loving it. I loved it as much as I loved Star Wars, you know. But back then a lot of my favourite films came out. You know, we had Star Trek the Motion Picture and Star Trek 2, we had Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, then we had The Black Hole and Tron, all films that I loved. I was never much into like Battlestar Galactica. Never got into that in quite the same sort of way. I'd watch it if it was on. Same with sort of Buck Rogers, the TV series, that is. That sort of stuff I never quite got into. BBC wise, you know, on the home front, you know, as opposed to movies, I did enjoy. I was massively into Doctor Who, and there was a series in the UK called Blake 7, which was very popular. Another space series. Then we had the BBC's adaptation of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. We had the Day of the Triffids, the Quatermass movie. There was some good stuff coming out back then that's today regarded as almost like classic in a lot of cases. Of course, nowadays with so much sort of tele-fantasy around, we sort of, or stories with a bit of a twist or a gimmick, we sort of take that for granted. But back in the day, I think it's what a lot of people were craving. It just, the stations weren't really supplying us with what we wanted to watch. I think that was the key, you know. This one's actually got a sticker mark on, so I'm going to clean the rest of it first. It's actually got a bit of old sticker on, so let's put some on directly. Let's give it a minute to do its thing, so the polish will soak into that really ancient glue. With a bit of luck. And now I should be able to tease it off. You can almost hear it, can't you? But it is coming up. Bit of persistence. Here we are. Yeah, much better. It's not quite got it all off, but it's done a pretty good job. Good enough, shall we say. And that's the whole point of doing it, is to catch little bits and pieces like these. As we work our way through. These certainly aren't bad condition, that's for certain. This is another one with a little bit of a mark on. Probably my original one. Hasn't made much difference there. Right, so that is the end of the second pile, so we are over halfway on the polishing now. Just a couple more wedges to do. Okay, right. Devil World. Little sticker marks on the back there that we've got off. Didn't take very long to do. That's cool. I said I reckon most of these had already at some point been through my cleaning process, but there was a few like this one which had obviously never been done, so glad to give them the once over. Another one with a tiny, tiny little mark, which we've managed to get off. And the whole aim is to get these just as nice as I possibly can. And that is, I would say, very nice. Always got to laugh at that one. Monsters of Star Trek. Yeah, you wouldn't think that that was the very first book, that pocket books that went on to be, and still are, Star Trek's publisher for the best part of a quarter of a decade. This was their first stab at doing a Star Trek book. It was the that little one there, the Monsters of Star Trek. Still, once again, I'm really, really pleased that we've gone through these, and it's like another big chunk of the collection that's been looked over, which is what we're looking for, because there's still so much to get through. And I don't think we've done any Star Trek cleaning at all on this channel, so I hope you've enjoyed sort of looking through these books, which you may not have seen before. But as I said, if you want to know a bit more about the actual stories and the authors behind them as well, I have done quite a detailed series on the history of Star Trek paperbacks, the only sort of one of its kind really on YouTube, which you might find interesting over on my other channel. Just sort of search for Star Trek paperbacks and you'll find it. You'll find the playlist, you know, and you can watch them all in order. In actual fact, the first two videos that I ever made for my main YouTube channel, which was over 4 years ago now, were my original Star Trek collection. You see it's expanded quite a bit from those early days, so there you go. I don't suggest you watch them with the bad sound and the questionable lighting. But they were good experiments to cut my teeth in the world of YouTube. Can't do that one, that's actually got a paper cover, so I can't do anything with that, so I won't try. Got to be careful of these things. I'm going to do one more and then I'm going to restart the camera. My camera sort of records properly in like 20 to 25 minute bursts. So when the camera running time for each segment is hit to 20 minutes or so, I need to stop it and restart another segment. So that is exactly what I'm going to do right now. Now my pile of books has got a little high, so let's just square these up. They call it in the trade, squaring up. Okay, giving us a bit more room to play with now. I have had the odd disaster whilst I've been filming where things have gone over the side, and I've not ruined anything, you'll be pleased to hear. I've not spilt any of my coffee or anything like that, or juice, whilst I've been filming, but I have dropped some stuff over the edge of the table, which is not recommended if you can help it. So I'm trying to think about what we're going to plan and do next week. I think it's probably going to be another little batch of large format books. The next sort of couple of boxes of them, I think. I'm making the most of the space. But I have also now pulled out, because I've been sorting the Star Trek books recently, I have now got all the numbered pocket Star Trek books in numerical order, plus all the spin-offs ready to be sort of gone through and cleaned, and in most cases they're not as nice condition as these. They do vary quite a bit, so I think they're going to be a video in there in themselves. And also as I said, loads and loads of large format stuff to do, so I might do another large format. I don't think I'm going to do the next lot of Star Trek books just next week. Might be in a few weeks time. I don't think I'm in a position to do any Penguin books, because I've recently had a lot of them out doing specialist videos on Penguin Modern Classics and also vintage Penguin travel books. So I need to get those back into the main collection numerically before I do another sort of vintage Penguin video. So they're going to have to be as they are for now. So I'm thinking, as a not a stopgap, but as the next one, I think it best be more large format books and annuals and graphic novels and stuff. I think, just because it's going to make the most sort of headway in the collection with what I'm doing at the moment, you know. I am off to IKEA this weekend, and I'm going to be picking up a couple of bookcases. There's one for my son. He's now looking after my Xbox game collection, so he's got all the original Xbox in there, but he needs another bookcase for the later, like 360 games and some of his figures and stuff. So we're going up there to get that for him, and I'm going to get a bookcase for myself, which I've managed to squeeze into the office. It's going to give me another nice wedge of space to store more books, which is exactly what we're looking to do. Right, now one last pile, so let's get them out. Right, the last few best of tracks. And although we've not had anything really challenging today, we haven't even needed to get the glue out, I do feel the books are in a much better state than they were when we began, shall we say, you know. So from that point of view, I am definitely pleased with our progress today. few marks on the back of this one, which are coming up lovely. So, as we film this, I've got the last 3 episodes of Picard Season 3 to watch. Boy oh boy, I've been really enjoying that series. I've just been struggling a little bit with having to go back to working full time while I've been training for a new job and just filming videos. Of course, I haven't really had time to sit down, but I imagine once I've watched the next one, I will watch the final 2 back to back. So I'm very much trying to get those done over the next couple of days. But I like to do it when the wife's gone out. I turn the TV up nice and loud and really immerse myself in a bit of Next Generation, which is in effect what this season of Picard is, isn't it? It's like the Next Generation, and I am absolutely loving it. Haven't been there with Star Trek Next Gen literally from back in '87 when it got revived, all those years ago. If you ever do get a chance to read the William Shatner biographies, they are excellent. They're also particularly good on audiobooks. So he did audio readings of the whole lot, and they're really entertaining. So I definitely recommend those if you can get your hands on them. They are probably online if you look hard enough. Quite beaten up old copies of these. They were very much designed for youngsters. And there is another one of these. I actually haven't got it. There's 2 in existence, but they're all pretty scarce. And any of these books from this period, these like choose your own adventure game books, they're scarce. You know, they're very, very popular. They've got a massive following. They're very, very nostalgic for some people, and consequently they're in demand and the price has gone up on them. So that is what unfortunately happens. There you go. So what was I literally just saying about I've knocked the odd book on the floor? Well, there you go, you've just seen it. Literally done it. So let me that's nice and clean. Let me go and rescue the Which Way book. Thankfully, no harm done. Ha ha. Let's get these last few done. Remember when I first read this, it was like a mid-70s edition of it, which is quite common. But I gotta admit, I was absolutely hooked. What a great, great story. Roddenberry, of course, had written for the Westerns up to that point, done a lot for those over the years, as well as other sort of network shows, and they eventually gave him the green light for Star Trek, but it was by no means an easy process, you know. Lovely. Don't need much cleaning, do they, since they're just lovely condition. Just a little bit of surface dust. So the video's gone slightly longer than an hour this time, but that was just because of the sheer amount of books that we were covering in today's video. But as I said, it didn't warrant splitting in two, but I did want to get them all done in sort of in one hit, and that's I'm pleased to see we've been able to do that without too much trouble, so that's okay. So yeah, if you have enjoyed today's video, do please give it the thumbs up. Leave a comment if there's something you particularly liked about it, or if you just like the series in general, as we've been working our way through all these vintage paperbacks. I do enjoy reading the comments. I try and reply to them all, and it really does encourage me to carry on making these, because I haven't always got the time, but I try and make as much time as possible to get these filmed for you on a regular basis. So yeah, thanks very much for watching today, and we'll be back next Saturday with another video, which I suspect is going to be some more large format books and annuals. So we'll see you in 7 days' time. Bye.